Welcome to Catholic Matters, an hour of information and discussion on life and family issues and the trusted guidance of the Catholic Church in our daily lives. And now, here is your host, Patty Staley.
Welcome to Catholic Matters. We are holding truths to be self-evident today on Catholic Matters. Those truths of the sanctity of human life, free speech, freedom to assemble and to associate. But while they may be evident to us, in practice, these rights are daily challenged. Today, we have the honor to have with us courageous guests who defend life and liberty. They are first, Rich Collier, attorney and president of the Legal Center for the Defense of Life. Rich has extensive experience and victories in the courts for the pro-life cause. He will strengthen us today by reminding us we have a precious document that cements our rights given by God and that no intimidation tactics should hold us back from practicing or living our faith or defending the right to life. Also, here to give testimony to the great work of the Legal Center is John Mucca and Carmen Romero, faithful leaders at the Princeton Women's Center Abortion Clinic in Hamilton, New Jersey. They will tell us about the episodes that have occurred while witnessing to life at that abortion clinic. Their witness at this clinic, is peaceful as it is, was irritating to the consciences of the clinic owners and law enforcement. And while our law enforcement is trying to balance legal rights of all involved in places where babies are being killed by the dozens and their mothers' lives are being changed forever, rights are being trampled on those who witnessed there. We're going to hear that story and the victory that has come from it. So I'd like to welcome to Catholic Matters, Rich Collier. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you, Patty. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And John Mucca.
Patty, it's great to be on your show again.
Thank you for coming back, John. And for the first time, Carmen Romero. Thank you, Carmen, for coming over to visit with us.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
Rich, you have been known as a champion for life now for many years, but I'd like to ask you, at what point in your life were you moved to add the defense of the unborn and pro-life people to your already very full career as an attorney and your role as a family man?
Well, believe it or not, my very first year in law school was the year that Roe v. Wade was decided. Okay. And it became a center feature in my entire legal career and outlook from that point on. I remember the day it was decided, sitting on a front porch trying to figure out ways to argue against it, just for my few months in law school. So I didn't really get started actively in pro-life legal activities until I had a little bit more legal experience under my belt, and that was in the mid-'80s when I got involved in some adoptions of courageous young women who decided to keep their babies but give them up for adoption, and then a few other litigations where we had to fight with various state agencies or whatever over various pro-life issues. And eventually some courageous and far-sighted attorneys up in Morristown, Dick Traynor and Terry Gallagher, one day came out of Mass, and they were inspired to found the Legal Center, which was it's a nonprofit organization that gathers volunteer pro-life attorneys to provide services for those like John and Carmen who are courageous enough to go out and witness to the culture of life in our society. And they were looking for a president, and they told me I wouldn't have to say anything, but they lied.
They did.
I became the president, and now they call me the president for life. But I don't know what that means.
That's great.
That means you're not getting off the hook. Now, all of this is done pro bono.
Everything that the Legal Center does is pro bono. It was founded in 1989, and since 1989, no pro-lifer in New Jersey has had to spend even one nickel for attorney's fees.
Because pro bono means free.
Pro bono means
no
free.
cost
It's all volunteer work. The costs that are attached, we have great supporters. We have fundraisers and whatever. Ordinary citizens donate money to pay the rent, to pay the court costs. We have to pay filing fees and copying costs, and we have to keep the phones running,
Yes.
The fax machines working, the internet going. So all of that infrastructure has to be paid for, and we get donations for that. But the actual pro-lifers, and at both ends of the spectrum, both at the abortion end and at the end of life end, because we do get involved in those cases as well, they don't have to spend anything, and the attorneys volunteer their time for that.
You rely completely on the rule of law, the foundation of our system, which is the Constitution. Rich, I want you to tell us some of the victories that you have had in court defending the rights that are enshrined in these founding documents and how these documents have helped you specifically in those cases.
Well, most people are very law-abiding and have sort of, I don't know where they get it, but I guess it's inculcated over the years that there's something radical or off the reservation about demonstrating or speaking up in public. And in fact, the First Amendment of our Constitution stacks all of the law in our favor. We have, in this country, as close as anywhere in the world, an absolute right to speak out on anything, and we can't be punished for it, and we can't be penalized for it. We have the right to stand on any public sidewalk anywhere in the country, any public right-of-way, and speak out to people who are walking by or driving by, hold signs, hand out leaflets, and do any sort of thing like that we want. And we actually need to do that. We need to engage the public and make sure that the public is not just being fed the treacle that they get from the media, but that they see that there are fellow citizens who feel strongly enough about this, that they are out there putting their bodies on the line, not just their, not just their prayers, which are absolutely important, and prayer in the sacraments, of course, is the most important. But we are an incarnational religion. Our bodies are very important in our religion, and unless we are witnessing with our bodies, we're maybe not being as complete and perfect as we might otherwise be. And the Legal Center is really not the story here. The Legal Center is a service organization to facilitate that this continues in our country, that we do have the right to continue speaking out, that a level playing field is maintained for pro-lifers so that they can witness and that they can save babies. I can't tell you how many stories I have heard from the people who stand outside of abortion mills and pray, and sidewalk counsel, that just their being there has saved babies. The women if a woman goes in to have an abortion and doesn't see anybody there, she's just going to walk in and not think much of it. But if she sees people there who are there for her and who are praying for her and her baby and are offering help and have places for her to go and numbers for her to call, or even put her in a car and take her to an ultrasound, this has saved babies' lives all over the state of New Jersey, throughout the country as well. But I have actually seen it and heard many, many stories about it, and countless babies are saved, not as many as should be. But
because it is God's work,
and
God
absolutely
is the one leading. All we have to do is show up. I do know of a story that I witnessed as well down at the Planned Parenthood in Trenton about 10 years ago. There was a young woman who was from another country, and she came as a nanny to work in the Princeton area. And she became pregnant with a relationship with a man she met here. And she was very concerned and very upset. She made the appointment at the Planned Parenthood in Trenton, but she happened the weekend before to be at St. Paul's Church in Princeton, and there was a basket of rosaries in the back. And she picked up a rosary because she knew that her mother prayed the rosary. She just held it. She didn't pray. She just held it. She took that rosary to the appointment a couple of days later. She happened to see a priest one of our dear priests, Father Chris Wojciechowski, who was a very committed prayer over at that clinic. All he was doing was standing alone, but his rosary was hanging down as he was praying. She saw the rosary, and she connected it, and she did not go in. She approached him and asked for help. All he did was stand there to pray. But God made that connection. The rosary in her pocket, the rosary she saw, that's all he had to do. And a baby was saved in that instance. So you are right, Rich. We have to know that we have the right to be out there. Our Constitution provides it, and we can wrap ourselves in it literally, even though at this time in our country, it seems there's a lot of intimidation. There's a lot of very loud voices shouting, don't do it, you'll be in trouble. You know, we're going to take your rights away. Maybe you don't have the right to be there because we're mad. Not true.
Not true. And what I developed with the legal center attorneys many years ago, we now have a standard 10-page single-space letter, which is a sort of the primer, the summary of First Amendment law. And every time the pro-lifers are going to a particular town, to a particular abortion mill or a demonstration of one sort or another, we send that letter to either the town attorney or the chief of police or both, and it basically says, our clients are coming. Here's the law. If you have a problem with this, let us know now so we can have a federal judge teach it to you.
Okay.
And if we don't hear from you, we expect you to respect our rights just as our clients are going to respect what the law is. They're not going to be making loud noises or trespassing or doing anything illegal. They're there in a peaceful, prayerful demonstration, and they have the right to be there. And you have no right to interfere with them. In fact, your duty is to protect them against people who try to interfere with them.
Absolutely.
And so we send that letter. I've sent that hundreds of letters like that, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the country. And I would say 99% of the places that get that letter, we have no problem whatsoever, and the pro-lifers do their thing, and nobody hears any problems. There are always a couple of
And we're going to talk about one of those right now. But before we do, I know there are people listening that are thinking, you know, I'd like to have the information on the Legal Center just in case someday I'm in a spot as a pro-lifer, as a Catholic. Can you give us the contact information for the Legal Center for the Defense of Life here in New Jersey?
I hope so.
Okay.
Probably the best way to do it is just to plug the name into a search engine on the Internet, Legal Center for the Defense of Life, Morristown, New Jersey.
Yes.
That's where the headquarters is. The phone number is 973-984-0725. And I believe the URL link is www.legalcenternj.com or .org. I can never remember.
I did pull it up last night, and you can do it with just the search engine using the words for the Legal Center.
So it's fairly easy to get to, and there's always somebody who will get back to you.
Absolutely.
So if anybody needs any help on it, on any of this stuff, even just advice or what can I do or what can I do, we give a lot of advice over the phone or over the Internet, emails constantly. So it's no problem. As John and Carmen know, I often work between 2 and 4 in the morning on some of these things.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So
and on weekends.
on weekends, so it's no problem about contacting the Legal Center. Some of these things have to be done very quickly and on the run, and there are often one of the most disheartening things is we get a regular series of calls every few months from young women whose parents are forcing them to have abortions.
And they're contacting you.
And they contact us, and that is a super emergency because it has to, almost invariably we find out about it the night before the abortion. Wow. And their parents, under the law, their parents are not allowed to do that. They cannot
even
force
for an underage
an underage minor who's living with the parents, an unemancipated minor, still has the right to make her own decision to carry that baby, and no one is allowed to interfere with that. that is actually said in the Roe v. Wade cases. So this so-called right to choose goes both ways, but unfortunately a lot of people in our society think it's only one way. But it does. There are young girls whose babies are saved simply because somebody's on the other end of that phone when somebody calls, and they leap into action immediately.
That's excellent to know. Now, John and Carmen, I would like you to tell the story that kept Rich up at night.
Sure.
What happened out at the Hamilton, it's called the Princeton Women's Clinic on Cruiser Road?
It is the Princeton Women's Clinic, but it's now located in Hamilton Township on 1345 Cruiser Road.
And I would like
conveniently only a half a mile from my house.
Yeah,
they decided to set up business in my neighborhood.
And John, it's important for our listeners to know this is not necessarily a local issue because of the owner of the clinic is Stephen Brigham, and with the series of clinics that he owns throughout the East Coast, I believe, and all of the difficulty that he has brought to women and to babies, which we'll talk about. This is something that is really should be national in focus, is Stephen Brigham and his string of clinics. But you did go out because it was in your neighborhood. You were called in your heart to go and stand and pray. Carmen, I'm sure it was the same for you. So tell us what happened when you wanted to prayerfully witness to girls who were going into the clinic.
Well, the story goes back a ways. Father Van Hager, who many people know from this area, has been a very staunch advocate of pro-life as a priest. He's the one who really initiated the vigil at that location, and it was a bit of time before I realized what was going on there. And I can still remember my wife and I pulling up to the site, and he was there with one other person. It was a cold, cold January morning, a Saturday. And it was so cold that when we rolled the window down just to say a few words to him, we just had to roll it back up again because it was so cold, but yet he was out there. And so he became kind of my mentor because I couldn't just let him stand there out in the cold all the time. So through 40 Days for Life, that's how I got my involvement with it. And I got to know Father Van and his approach, and I also got to witness firsthand the ongoing harassment that he was going through from the Hamilton Township Police. Now, understandably, there is a balance of legal rights that we're dealing with here. So the building owner and the person performing the abortions, they have certain legal rights. But again, we have our First Amendment rights, and those were the things that we were kind of losing out on. So it wasn't uncommon to have 4 police cars show up and a sergeant come over and in a very intimidating way really tell us that we had strict limitations on what we could do. For a time, we were not allowed to put any signs physically into the ground. We would have to hold them, wear them sandwich style was the only way we could have signs. Father Van was under a sort of a gag order for a while where he wasn't allowed to talk to any of the clients as they were to drive in or drive out. So, things were very tense. And if, any of the listeners, you realize when you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, which you might well deserve, it's stressful enough. And then we're out there and, out of the blue, suddenly 4 Hamilton Township police cars show up and we never know, what's going to be the outcome of those incidents. And so that was ongoing. And then, Rich took up Father Van's case because he was given a summons for littering and was having to make a court appearance. And I think, Rich, you could say a little bit about how you handle that aspect of it.
Sure. If I could just loop back 1 second. All of those things that John was just ticking off, don't put your signs on the ground. You have to hold them as a sandwich sign. You can't talk to anybody. All of those is absolutely unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. The cops had no right to say that. And in fact, they were violating the constitutional rights of Father Van and the other people there by instructing them not to do those things. And so I kept writing more and more of my letters, each of which was escalating in tone. And telling the cops they can't do that. Some of the cops agreed with us and said, you have the absolute right to do what you're doing, everything's fine, and they would leave. A few minutes later, some supervisor would come out and say, no, you can't do that, I'm telling you to get these signs out of here. And at one point, the owner of the building, a Catholic doctor, who owns the building and is the landlord for this abortion mill, came out and complained about the signs. And Father Van was leaving at the time, so he stacked his signs on the side of the road because it was late in the morning, and he went to get his car. When he came back, the cop gave him a ticket for littering because he left his signs on the side of the road while he went to get his car to put the signs in the car, which is,
creative.
It's harassment.
Yeah.
It's just harassment.
Creative harassment.
Yes, very creative harassment.
Yeah.
When the prosecutor found out that the cop's real reason, and he talked to the cop himself, the prosecutor talked to the cop and found out that the real reason was the cop didn't like the signs and was trying to help the owner of the building chase these people away. The prosecutor says, I can't prosecute that. That's unconstitutional. And so they had to drop the prosecution, and they dropped it with prejudice in late March. We had a sort of victory celebration.
Right. It was,
we were all elated that this, we finally.
We were just at the conclusion of the 40 Days for Life this spring, and so it was coming up to Palm Sunday. It was the Saturday before Palm Sunday, March 23rd, and we were at the site as usual and kind of rejoicing that we have our rights back.
But worse yet, I sent an email to John saying, "You'll never hear from those cops again."
All right, so to set the stage, so I'm at the site, Carmen's there, a number of other people, maybe a dozen folks, prayerful witness as usual. I look at them and I said, I've been here for a while. I'm going to go home for a minute to get a cup of coffee. So I go home. Patty, I think I even put your show on because it was about 10 o'clock Saturday morning. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from my son, and he says, the Hamilton Township Police are here, and they have a complaint about the signs. And I said, I can't believe that. And he said, no, they're really here. And I said, well, tell whoever it is, they are my signs, they're my responsibility. I will be there in 5 minutes, and we can work something out. Now, in the meantime, other things were happening. Maybe Carmen could tell the story because she's the real one that got us all down this path. So, Carmen, why don't you tell us what was happening while I was having some coffee at home?
If I can, I want to back up a little. If I can, I'd like to back up a little bit. Father Van left us on a Wednesday. That Wednesday, this was the Wednesday after the day that his case was dismissed. The police had showed up just as he was leaving, and they asked him to remove the signs, and he did, and then people held the signs. Now, up until that time, I never had to worry about the police because Father Van was there. He took care of everything. I never gave it a second thought. However, after he left, it bothered me that somebody needed to step up now and continue what Father Van was doing. But I didn't feel that I was qualified to do it, but I felt guilty. So that Friday, the Friday before this incident happened, I went before the Blessed Sacrament, and I was there an hour and a half, and I was praying. I said, Dear Lord, I feel that I should do more, but I really don't feel that I have the knowledge or the expertise to do anything. If you want me to do something, you have to give me some sign. You have to, something. So I was there an hour and a half. When I left, I was very disappointed because usually I feel something. I am a frequent visitor of the Chapel of Adoration, so I feel that I do have a connection with the Holy Spirit. And it's not that I'm special or unique. It's just that if you spend the time, if you give the time, the Lord answers you. The Lord, you can feel His presence. So I left there disappointed, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go tomorrow. And then Saturday morning comes along, and I'm ashamed of even showing my face there because I'm thinking I should rise, I should do something more. So I figured, well, I'm just going to go for 15 minutes. So I went. I was there 2 hours. Now, when I got there, the Hoffmans were there. Jim Hoffman was there, and he was giving out copies of the letter that Rich Collier had sent to the police chief, had emailed to the police chief the night before. And in that letter, he's giving a lot of information about what's been going on, which he's been reiterating every time he sends a letter. And he cited there the ordinance that the police department is referring to. It's an ordinance that actually gives us the right to have the signs in the ground, as John mentioned. And I took a copy of the letter. I don't know why, because I was only planning to be there for 15 minutes. But I held the letter in my hand. 2 hours later, a police car pulls in, and I start shaking. Now, I've never been intimidated by the police, perhaps because they're young enough to be my own kids. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not intimidated by them. But I was shaking. And I thought to my mind, the thought came to my mind, trouble. This is trouble. So he parks his car, and then he comes to us, and we're about 14 people there, and I'm standing opposite him when he approaches us. And he says that we need to remove the signs. And I don't know what happened, but my legs start walking. It's like my legs start taking me to
and
the
then
police
your mouth
office.
started talking.
Now, I am not a confrontational person. I am a coward with a big C. I am a coward. And here my legs are going with the letter in hand. And I open up the letter. He could probably read the letter. I mean, I practically had it in his face. And at that moment, he's handing me the ordinance, and I happen to look at the number, and it's the same ordinance number that Rich referred to in the letter. So I said to him, Officer, I have a letter here from our lawyer addressed to the police chief, and it references the same ordinance that you're referring to, which actually gives us the right to have the signs in the ground. And he says, well, if you don't remove the signs, I'm going to give out a summons. So with that, John's son proceeds to remove a sign. And again, I don't know who said this, but out of my mouth comes, no, stop. And as I'm saying this, I was shaking, but I felt joy. I felt so good. I felt that I was standing for justice. For the first time in my life that I would stand up for anything. I can't tell you the joy that I felt. It's ironic because I'm shaking, yet I feel joy. And I felt so good. And he's asking me then for my driver's license, and I'm even shaking more because I've never been stopped by the police. So, I was nervous. So I give him my license, and then he leaves to go into his car to fill out the summons. And John's son, who happens to be a seminarian and a lovely young man, and not because John is here. He's just a lovely young man. He goes over to the policeman in my defense, and I heard him say that I did not put the signs in the ground, that it was his father. And then John came along, after his wife called him and his son called him.
So I arrive, and I walk over to the officer who's seated in the car, and I said, Officer, can I help you? And he said, do those signs belong to you? And I said, yes, those are my signs. Good, let me have your driver's license because you're getting a summons. And I said, Officer, we're happy to comply with your wishes. What would you like us to do? That's too late for that. That lady's getting a summons, and so are you. And by the way, it carries a $2,000 potential penalty, so just think about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, don't forget that he asked you to back up from the car.
Right, so I'm standing there, with my hands at my side, and then all at once he looks up and he says, I want you to back away from the car. And I said, really? Yes, you're intimidating me. And I said, Officer, how far would you like me to back up? And he's far enough away so I don't feel intimidated. So, then both of us stood there for 10 minutes while he went through the, checked the license, went through this whole maneuver of writing the summons up. And then we removed the signs. He got out of his car and he said, now here's the summons. You're going to appear in court on this date. You're going to answer for this. And you got to move those signs right now or I'm taking them with me. And I said, Officer, I said I would remove the signs when I first walked up to you, and we'll do that now if it's okay. Yes, you should. So at that point, we removed the signs. And then I stood there in shock thinking, wow, this is going to cost some money, right?
The signs weren't actually removed, were they, John?
They weren't actually removed?
I mean, you were removed from the ground.
Well, we removed them from the ground, and we held them up instead of having them in the ground, right? Yeah.
But if I may interject, John, you forgot something. Mm-hmm. Something happened to all of us after John and I got the summons. I, out loud, said to them, we have not broken the law here. We have not done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. We have a letter here from our attorney which expressly says that we have the right to put the signs in the ground. It is the police that is on the wrong side here. And I said out loud, I am tired of knowing that many of these young girls are coerced into abortion and they don't even know what abortion is. And sometime in the future, they have to live with that mistake that they made. They have to live with the fact that they killed their baby. I'm also outraged at the thought that a young man, if a young man makes a mistake and gets a girl pregnant and he wants to keep the baby and he's able to keep the baby, he has no right. That's an injustice. And I said, if we don't stand up for what we believe, if we don't stand up for justice, we're going to lose our freedom. And with that, a young man a married man who was only coming for 15 minutes because his car broke down, and he was borrowing his wife's car, leads us in the rosary. And John says, everybody, take the signs and spread out and put them across your chest, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, we just belted out the rosary. We were on fire. And then after we finished the rosary, a young man had a Palm Pilot, and he says, I'd like to say a prayer for religious freedom. I don't know who that young man is, but he must have been he looked like a student, maybe 18 years old, 20 years old. And he read from his Palm Pilot a beautiful prayer of religious freedom, and there was just this complete silence. Mm-hmm. And when he was finished, there was a harmonious amen. So, I mean, it was unbelievable. Rich, I wish you had been there.
Yeah, it was.
We were on fire. That was truly, truly the Holy Spirit working in here.
So I think you got your answer to your when you were in the chapel the night before.
Yes,
I think you
did.
got your
You had
answer
the
at that
answer
point.
specifically.
Most dramatically.
And specifically, you were educated.
Oh
You were educated and informed immediately when you.
Oh my God! I became a different person.
Now, there's a couple of points here. First of all, Rich, these tactics can wear pro-lifers out.
Well, not only wear them out, but it actually does intimidate people into not coming, and that's a very unfortunate aspect of it. They hear rumors, or they find out that John and Carmen are being harassed, and they don't want to be harassed.
Correct.
And they think that maybe they're doing John and Carmen must be doing something wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And so people don't come who should be coming, and people who do come suffer, tension and stress and fear and intimidation, and for nothing. It's really, as I said before, all the law is stacked in our favor, and these guys are flouting it. And so that's why we have to hit them on the side of the head with a 2x4.
And now at this clinic, it's settled down. What occurred from this that people can feel very comfortable to come out and pray?
Well, sure. I mean, so the next morning, Sunday morning, Jim Hoffman, I told Jim Hoffman what had happened, and he had Rich's phone number. So that Saturday, he got in contact with Rich. Unfortunately, Rich has a way of honoring the Lord's Day and keeping it holy in a very special way. So 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, he's calling me on my cell phone saying, I heard you had a little incident there yesterday. And I said, yes, and I'm very nervous about it. I've been looking for this opportunity. I'm going to take your case pro bono. Don't worry about a thing. And wow, just the release of the stress at that point to know that I've got this lawyer that's is going to do this on a pro bono basis. So Rich worked so much magic in terms of they gave us court dates, they postponed them, they gave us court dates, postponed them, and all throughout that process, Rich is doing his attorney thing in a very professional way, but asserting our rights repeatedly, and eventually we got to the point where we got to a legal settlement.
The town attorney instructed the police not to do that anymore. And he also indicated that the town is looking into changing its sign ordinances to make them constitutional, because many of them are unconstitutional right now. The town has agreed to pay some money for damages and legal fees for the harassment. And there are a few other things that are being negotiated, even as we speak, that hopefully in the next week or two we will wrap this up as a complete package. But the bottom line is that those who are going out to witness on the public sidewalk in front of that Cooser Road abortion mill, they can do that without intimidation. The cops sit across the street and watch them from time to time, I guess.
Well,
they must not have much to do in Hamilton Township, but
which might have been the reason you were the focus, because there was something happening for once in Hamilton Township.
Yeah,
Carmen, if I may just ask Carmen real quick, as someone who did not witness before this Cooser Road clinic came, what would you tell those who are thinking of coming out to pray now? Are you comfortable out there? What do you see out there? What happens on a typical 15-minute to 1 hour period of standing in front of the clinic?
How much time do I have? First of all, I have to say that the group there are wonderful. We pray rosaries, and then we chat a little bit, and we pray rosaries, and we have created here a wonderful community of Christian people. And I say Christian because Most of us are Catholics, but there have been Protestant people who have also joined us in prayer when possible.
Thankfully,
so this is
yes.
an amazing experience, and I love going there. Most important is I've witnessed young girls coming in a expensive car, most likely to have an abortion, because you're not going to have a young girl in the back seat with a driver in the front is highly suspicious, and I think that's an abortion. I've seen young girls go in there and come out doubled over, and as a mother, in my mind, they should have been going to a hospital.
This is very common,
Okay.
especially with that
Yes.
clinic when it was in Princeton. Now that
Yes.
it's moved to
Yes.
Hamilton, we do know that the girls, how many are happening per week?
Yes.
I understand there's dozens,
Yes.
a couple dozen girls are going in, babies being
Yes.
killed.
Yes.
What I have seen in Princeton, I don't know if you're seeing it there, the girls would come out, when they were discharged, they were out with a lollipop. Because they were fasting from the night before, so I guess they give them a lollipop, and literally sitting on the curb waiting for a ride. The tragedy that is out there, it is the reason you're there to pray. It is the reason you're trying to beckon the girls, even if you're not talking to them.
Yes.
You're trying to let them know you are here to
Yes.
help.
Yes.
This is the way this works with all abortion clinics, but Stephen Brigham's in particular. Now, he happens to have, because there's a chain of abortion clinics.
16.
16.
He owns 16 abortion mills, most of which are in New Jersey, about 8 or 9 in New Jersey.
And they have a centralized number, Rich.
And they do. They have their own website, American Women's Services. I did some research a few months back and found out that Brigham's abortion mills in New Jersey are not registered and under the corporation laws, and they are all operating illegally. They are all unlawfully operating. They do not have authority to do business in New Jersey. And this was reported by New Jersey Right to Life to the Attorney General of New Jersey, and nothing has been done about it. He can be shut down in 24 hours if somebody had the will to do it.
No, he could be shut down legally.
Legally, because he's operating unlawfully. He is not registered to do business in New Jersey.
Should happen
so
immediately.
now we have another Kermit Gosnell situation
Yes,
where
absolutely.
the people who are supposed to enforce the law are not inspecting. They're not doing what they're supposed
This
to
is
be doing.
absolutely true. I think it would be shut down if the girls going in, or hopefully those who are bringing them, understood that throughout his clinics and all the 16 clinics, there has been an abortionist who was an admitted sex offender and drug abuser. There were 2 convicted drug violators, a convicted income tax cheat who once paid out $3.5 million in a malpractice suit, an abortionist convicted of billing fraud, and several abortionists that cannot get hospital privileges. So when you look to see who he is employing to do these abortions, and this information came from an extensive study by Operation Rescue, this is knowledge that is not out there. The girls do not understand. Talk about informed consent. We do not have informed consent laws here in New Jersey. Informed consent where abortion is concerned means that prior to an abortion, a woman would be given all of the medical information that she would need about what the abortion does, the fetal development of the baby, the consequences of that surgery, which all surgeries do have, but there are particular ones with abortion. All of this information is not required to be given to a girl who's about to enter into a situation that's going to take the life of her baby. Honestly, some do not even understand that that is true.
It's worse than that even. The New Jersey Supreme Court about 8 years ago decided a case that allows the abortionist to actually lie to the woman if he thinks that will do her good. If she asked,
Was
for
that
example,
the Rosa Acuna case?
The Rosa Acuna case where
Wow.
she specifically asked him questions about her baby, and he lied to her. And the New Jersey Supreme Court said, well, that's all right because that was his opinion and she had her opinion, and we're not going to penalize him for having an opinion.
And we do know now, because there are newscasters who are saying that we know it's all opinion, even if it's a baby or not a baby. It's the parent's decision, parent's opinion of whether this is a life or not.
They don't want to be bound by facts.
Absolutely. But we are bound by facts, and we're bound by the Constitution, and we have this behind us. And that is what the success of this has been, is using what is already there. We don't need all new laws protecting us. They're there. And people like Rich Collier and the Legal Center can come in and help each and every person who is facing a situation like this, and even clear the way so that it doesn't happen to begin with. That's probably the best way, Rich, is the proactive way, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We rarely have any incidents, as I say, but there's always one or two. Today we had one in Englewood.
Okay.
An hour before I came here, I got a call from an incident in Englewood, New Jersey. So it goes on in some places more routinely than others, but as I say, 99% of the time, once we clear the way, there's no problem. Everybody steps back and lets things happen as they will.
Yes.
And I can certainly testify that at the clinic in Hamilton Township now, we went through a little changeover time when the police would come, but they were very polite. They always stated, we understand your constitutional rights. We just have a couple of questions to ask you. But in the past few weeks, they don't even stop. They don't come at all. So we're finally at the point where we have a peaceful place where our rights are respected. We have the 8 feet or so public way right next to the highway, next to the street there. We make full use of that with our display, and we're in peaceful prayer, and we're attentive to the folks that come in if they want to talk to us, if we can help them. We've had several cases where men have come over to talk to us because they didn't want the abortion to take place. We've had women approach us for advice and phone numbers to call, and we've been there for them. And I think everyone should also recognize that we respect the fact that the women coming in there are oftentimes being coerced and are at least highly deluded as to what this procedure is all about. We are there to support them. We are there to grieve the loss of these children. We are there to, be aware of what the impact is going to be for all these women and also for the men. And we're in prayer that they will change their lives and have the grace of God come upon them. Carmen had her kind of Rosa Parks moment where, I'm not going to the back of the bus anymore. I'm going to stand up for the rights that I have. And the Holy Spirit was very active in that. And when you come there as an individual, I would say that, like Woody Allen said, 90% of success in life is just showing up. And that's the key to coming out. You don't have to do anything special. Just show up. And the Spirit will be there, and we are there. We are a community, very accepting of anybody that comes, regardless of religious background, not religious background. Anyone who understands that what's at stake there and what's really going on, the reality of it, and you will be a part of that community. And it gets to be the point where it's just, it becomes your routine. And we need those routines because on the other side, there is the Saturday routine that they go through every Saturday. And you can watch the abortionist arrive at exactly 10 minutes to 9 every Saturday, get out of his car, and now he's taken to waving at us in kind of a defiant gesture like, ha-ha, you can't stop me. And, that's where we're at now. So I encourage people to take advantage of this victory and come out in larger numbers to help us make an impression.
John and Carmen and Rich, you have mentioned Father Van Hagar several times with great respect on today's Catholic Matters, and we happen to have him on the phone. Welcome, Father Van, to Catholic Matters.
Thank you. Good to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. We're so glad that you're here, Father. We're just talking about the victory out at the clinic in Hamilton, owned by Stephen Brigham, and is operating, and it looks like they are taking babies by the dozens each week at this clinic, Father. Is that right?
Yes. We've been praying there for over a year. And we had moved there to the Hamilton site from Princeton, where they had been operating for over 35 years.
And there was witness for just about all those 35 years, Father. Is that right? When it was in Princeton and now that it's moved to Cooser Road in Hamilton?
As I understand, the witness in Princeton was about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, there were also other businesses in the same area that the abortion mill was located in, and especially the owners of the other businesses were very upset that we were using signage which explicitly was saying exactly what they were doing inside of the abortion mill. And as a result, the landlord of that particular location decided not to renew their lease, and that's how we got them to move out of Princeton, and now they're over in Hamilton.
Yes. Father, you have witnessed for many years at different abortion clinics, and I'm going to ask you something concerning those involved in the abortion industry. Explain to us what the spiritual change is in those who become involved in abortion, whether it's as a businessman, or in medical practice. What do you see? Because it seems that very gentle people can be very irritating to those who are in the practice of abortion. What happens interiorly once you step into this practice of taking the lives of the unborn?
I think something very evil happens, and it's almost a general apathy for anything that has to do with the sacredness of human life. We've also found that many of these people that are involved in the abortion industry are also involved in the occult, and have even at times offered the bodies of the dead babies up to Satan as a part of their ritualistic practices.
That is very serious, and it is why we do not just pray for the babies, for the mothers, but we pray very fervently for the abortion workers, included in those prayers that are out there.
Absolutely.
Each and every week at all of the clinics across the country. Yeah, Father, I would say that, it has been said that mercy requires sacrifice. Catholics and good Christian people who are pro-life and really truly care about the issue do come out, but their presence in numbers is very important. It's something we talked about earlier in the show, Father, that, prayer at home is very good. Prayer in the adorations chapels is absolutely perfect, but we need the numbers of people out there. What difference does it make that you have seen over your years of witnessing that people who are present can affect the community?
Well, I think one of the most practical things that happens when you have large numbers of people is it makes the people that are involved in the abortion industry think more seriously about what they're doing, and it also is a way to educate the people of the area, because when they see that there is a larger number of people involved in a public witness, it makes them examine their own consciences and maybe help them to think that they could also do something. It's difficult for people to get out in public. It's very uncomfortable. Many of the times that we are there, the weather is not favorable, and yet we've been there in snowstorms and when it's raining and cold and windy. And even this, the very idea of our personal sacrifice, of being there under difficult conditions, is also something that makes the people think, particularly the young mothers that are going in. How many mothers have changed their mind and decided to keep their baby because they saw two men standing in the rain and praying the rosary? What a beautiful opportunity to witness publicly.
Absolutely. Something the women do not understand and that we convey to them is our love for the baby, because they are disconnecting from the humanity of their own child in order to walk into that clinic to begin with. If they just understood that that child will love them and they will love that child, that they are not understanding their motherhood at that point. And that is something that we would love for you to talk about, Father, because there are leaders that can help us to understand motherhood, the sacredness of human life, and one of them, one group, would be our priests. And you are a priest of Jesus Christ. Tell those priests who may be listening today how they can speak on the truth of protecting the person who is being violated in abortion, both the mother, the child, the father. How can they see them as vulnerable, preborn human beings and convey that to their parish when they're getting so much flack back by those who may be politically in a different place? But it is our priests that need to lead. How can they begin to speak on this issue, Father?
Well, first of all, I would say that any priest that's going to be speaking out from the pulpit should be ready to receive criticism not only from his own parishioners, but also from other priests in the diocese or in his religious community that may not be of the same idea. It's one thing to say that we are pro-life and we support life, but then it is quite another to talk about those issues from the pulpit that may be a little uncomfortable for people to hear. And yet it is so important for us as spiritual leaders to speak out strongly on these issues. One of the, I think, very important issues that everybody can relate to and which will be coming to the fore more and more these days is the idea of contraception that has been so prevalent within the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
In the non-Catholic churches, it's not so important to them as is to us, because we've had Paul VI write an encyclical about that, and he's told us about the evils of contraception. And there are people who have spoken out about this issue to help us to understand that there's a natural family planning that can be used, and it's possible to regulate the fertility between the couples. And it's also important that the idea of adoption is also spoken out from the pulpit.
Absolutely. We've had so many advances in natural family planning now that it is highly regarded, especially the work of the NAPRO technology from Dr. Hilgers out in Nebraska. Now, Father, I'd like to bring Carmen in on this issue, because I know the discomfort for priests to speak about abortion. It seems like it's a quote-unquote female issue, and, it might be something a little too intimate maybe to speak from the pulpit. But what is the importance for a priest to talk spiritually on the fact and educate those in the pews on abortion, on contraception, especially as a woman, Carmen? How would you receive that teaching from a priest when you're sitting in a pew at a local parish?
Well, it depends how it's presented. If you talk to the audience, if you talk to the congregation, like you're reading a list of something, it's not going to work. You have to try to be where they are, in my opinion, and let them know also that the church is not meant to judge. The church's intention is to guide and to offer options for these situations, to make them aware that there's help, that there are a lot of resources out there, and there is no reason why a woman has to have an abortion, because at the very least, they can opt for an adoption. And there is plenty of help and plenty of resources out there, and I think that information needs to get out there. People don't know of the many resources that we have that are free and available to anyone who is contemplating an abortion or feels compelled to have an abortion. There is no reason to have an abortion on this day.
You are absolutely right, Carmen. The services are free. I don't think Planned Parenthood has a single service that is offered for free.
Exactly.
That is a business. However, all anyone has to do is contact the local parish, the diocese, New Jersey Right to Life. All of these resources are there to direct you to a crisis pregnancy center. The help is there. It is a gift by others who love you.
If I can add also, in my parish, St. Raphael Holy Angels, in the parish bulletin, every week we publish the 800 numbers that people can call for if they're contemplating an abortion, or if they had an abortion and they need help. And that information is out there for them. So I would encourage other parishes to do the same thing. Get that information out there and let people know that there are resources and there's help out there. No woman needs to go through an abortion. Another thing that people don't understand or may not be aware of, I think because it's free, because it's legal to have an abortion, I think that people don't think about what they're doing. It's an easy way out. We live in a society where, we want to do things right away, fast, and they're not thinking. But they don't realize that, I lost my train of thought here now.
The consequences?
That's it. They don't realize the consequences of what they're doing. They don't realize, for example, statistics show that a woman who has an abortion may suffer psychological problems later on. Some of them get into drug addiction, alcohol addiction, suicide. And all of this is unnecessary if the truth is presented. See, that's what infuriates me most, is give them the truth. Give them all the information. Let a woman make her own decision based on all of the information.
And Carmen, that is up to each and every one of us, because personally we should be educated on this. We have to take personal responsibility to look up in this age of information what is an abortion, what is the meaning of motherhood, what's the beauty of a woman and her reproductive abilities with the beauty of a man in the same way. Having our priest explain to us the church teachings, because otherwise, the silence leaves women to suffer.
Correct.
We must begin to speak woman to woman, educate our legislators, our police officers who really are just doing what they're told to do, but maybe if they understood the subject, our holy priests who need the courage and the support of parishioners to go out there and also, speak to those parishioners who are listening and want the truth. Might be hard to take at first, but eventually you open up. Now, we are at the end of our show, which we could go on, and I want to thank Rich Collier. Thank you so much for coming into the studio and being with us and all the work that you do for the Legal Center.
My privilege.
And John and Carmen, thank you and keep up the good work. And Father Van, God bless you in your new assignment in Buffalo. I know that they're waiting for the good works that you will be doing there, too. Thank you.
Patty, thanks for your wonderful show as well. We're always glad to come down here.
Thank you for having us.